The corridor was silent, except for the echo of footsteps on marble. Daniel Foster stood at attention outside the private drawing room, his red uniform pressed to perfection, his expression unreadable. He had been a royal guard for 8 years. He knew how to become invisible, how to hear nothing, how to see nothing, but that afternoon, invisibility became impossible. Through the heavy oak door, voices rose and fell. Daniel's jaw tightened. Protocol demanded he remain still. Protocol demanded silence. But the words slipping through the gap in the doorway made his blood run cold. "She doesn't belong here," a voice said. Sharp, cutting, she never did. Daniel recognized that voice immediately. It belonged to someone whose favor could make or break careers in the palace. Someone whose displeasure could end his service in a heartbeat. The second voice was quieter, strained. "I'm doing my best. Your best isn't good enough," the first voice snapped. "You walk around like you're one of us. Like marrying in makes you royal. It doesn't. You're still just a commoner playing dress-up." Daniel's fingers curled slightly behind his back. He had been stationed outside many rooms, heard many private conversations, arguments between staff, tense phone calls, moments of frustration, but this was different. This was venom. Before you hear what happened next, if you love real stories about courage and loyalty, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this unfolds. The quieter voice trembled now. "I've tried to do everything right. I've followed every rule. And yet you still manage to embarrass us," the sharp voice continued. "At every event, every appearance, the way you smile too much. The way you talk to people like they're your friends. You don't understand your place." Daniel felt his heart pounding beneath his uniform. He had seen her many times. The woman being torn apart on the other side of that door. She was kind. She remembered the names of staff members. She asked about their families. She carried herself with a quiet grace that seemed effortless, and now she was being told she was worthless. "I won't tolerate mediocrity," the harsh voice said. "You need to learn your place, or you'll find yourself pushed out of the family entirely. And trust me, no one will miss you." There was a pause, a long, terrible silence, then the sound of muffled crying. Daniel's hands trembled. He stared straight ahead, his face a mask, but inside a war raged. He was a soldier, a protector. His duty was to the crown, to the institution, to the hierarchy that had existed for centuries. But his conscience was screaming at him. The door handle turned. Daniel snapped to perfect attention, his eyes fixed on the wall opposite. The door opened. The woman stepped out first, her eyes red but her chin held high. She didn't look at him. She moved quickly down the corridor, her heels clicking against the floor. Then the other woman emerged, composed, cold. She glanced at Daniel briefly. Her expression unreadable. "You're dismissed for the day." "Foster," she said curtly. "Yes, ma'am," Daniel replied. His voice steady, she walked away in the opposite direction. Leaving him alone in the empty hallway, Daniel stood there for a moment, his mind racing. He had a choice to make, a choice that would change everything. He could stay silent, pretend he heard nothing, protect his career, his reputation, his future, or he could do something that no royal guard had ever done before. Something that could cost him everything. Asterisk that evening. Daniel sat in his small apartment outside the palace grounds. The walls were bare, except for a single photograph of his graduation from the Royal Guard Academy. His father had been so proud. 3 generations of Fosters had served the crown. It was in his blood. He stared at his phone, thumb hovering over a contact name. Lieutenant Colonel James Hartley, his commanding officer, a man who valued honor above all else. Daniel had never questioned an order, never stepped out of line. But the words he'd heard kept echoing in his mind. The cruelty, the contempt, the way that kind woman had walked out of that room trying desperately not to break down. He knew what happened in royal families. He knew about tensions, disagreements, but this was different. This was bullying. This was abuse hidden behind closed doors, where no cameras could see, where no one would ever know. except he knew. His phone buzzed. A message from his mother. "Proud of you, Danny. Your father would be too." Daniel closed his eyes. His father had taught him that being a guard wasn't just about standing still and looking impressive. It was about protecting people. All people. Even from threats that didn't carry weapons. He pressed the call button. Hartley, the gruff voice answered. "Sir, it's Foster. I need to speak with you. Privately." There was a pause. "This sounds serious." "It is, sir. My office. Tomorrow morning, 700 hours. "Yes, sir." The line went dead. Daniel set his phone down and stared at the ceiling. He had just set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. By morning, he would either be a whistleblower or a traitor. There was no middle ground. The next morning arrived cold and gray. Daniel walked through the palace gates in civilian clothes, his stomach tight with anxiety. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that voice. "No one will miss you." Lieutenant Colonel Hartley's office was tucked in the administrative wing. Away from the grand halls where tourists took photos. Away from the public eye, Daniel knocked twice. "Enter." Hartley sat behind a heavy wooden desk, his uniform immaculate, his gray hair cut military short. He gestured to a chair. "Sit." Daniel sat, his back straight, despite not wearing his uniform. "You look terrible, Foster. What's going on?" Daniel took a breath. This was it. The moment that would define everything. "Yesterday, I was stationed outside the private drawing room on the second floor. I overheard a conversation between two members of the royal family. What I heard was beyond normal family tension. It was cruel, deliberate. One person was verbally attacking another in a way that crossed every line." Hartley's expression didn't change. "You know what you're saying, don't you? You're accusing someone of misconduct. Do you understand the weight of that?" "Yes, sir. Who was involved?" Daniel hesitated. Once he said the names, there was no going back. The Duchess and the Princess of Wales. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Hartley leaned back in his chair, his fingers pressed together. "You're telling me you heard the Duchess verbally abusing the princess?" "Yes, sir." It wasn't just criticism. It was vicious, personal. She told her she didn't belong, that she was an embarrassment, that no one would miss her if she left the family. Hartley was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned forward. "Foster, do you know what happens to guards who make accusations against senior royals? Even if you're telling the truth, you'll be destroyed. Your career will be over. Your family's legacy will be tarnished." "I know, sir." "Then why are you here?" Daniel met his eyes. "Because it was wrong. Because I took an oath to protect people. And because if I stay silent, I'm just as guilty as the person who said those things." Hartley studied him for what felt like an eternity. Then he picked up his phone. "This goes higher than me," he said quietly. "If you're committed to this, you'll need to make a formal statement. It will be investigated. And you will be questioned by people far more powerful than me." "I understand." Hartley dialed a number. "This is Hartley. I need to arrange an urgent meeting with the private secretary." "Yes, today." He hung up and looked at Daniel. "You just threw a grenade into the palace. I hope you're ready for the explosion." Asterisk, the private secretary's office smelled of old leather and furniture polish. Sir Edmund Cavendish was a man in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had witnessed 5 decades of royal drama. He sat across from Daniel, his expression carved from stone. "Mr. Foster," he began, his voice clipped and precise. "You understand the gravity of what you're alleging?" "Yes." "Sir, then you also understand that false accusations against members of the royal family are grounds for immediate dismissal and possible legal action." "Not making a false accusation." Sir Edmund opened a leather folder. "Walk me through exactly what you heard. Every word you can remember. Leave nothing out." Daniel recounted the conversation, the cruel tone, the specific words, the sound of crying. As he spoke, Sir Edmund's pen moved across the paper, taking notes without expression. When Daniel finished, silence filled the room. "Did anyone else witness this?" Sir Edmund asked. I was the only guard stationed there. Did you see either person's face during the conversation? No, sir. I was outside the room. And how can you be certain of their identities? Daniel had anticipated this question. I've served in the palace for 8 years. I know their voices. And when they exited, I saw them both. Sir Edmund set down his pen. Let me be frank with you, Foster. What you're describing, if true, is deeply troubling. But you're asking the palace to investigate one of its most senior members based on the testimony of a single guard who admits he didn't actually see the incident occur. I know what I heard. But perception and reality aren't always the same. Stress can distort memory. Emotions can color interpretation. Daniel felt his anger rising, but kept his voice calm. Are you suggesting I imagined this? I'm suggesting that accusing someone of this nature requires more than hearsay. Then what would you consider adequate proof? Sir Edmund closed the folder. That's not your concern. Your concern should be whether you're prepared for what comes next. If we proceed with an investigation, your life will be examined. Your record. Your personal history. Any grudges? Any debts? Any reason you might have to fabricate such a story? I have nothing to hide. Everyone has something to hide, Mr. Foster. The words hung in the air like a threat. Sir Edmund stood. You're to speak to no one about this. Not your fellow guards. Not your family. Not a soul. If word of this conversation leaks, you will be held responsible. Do you understand? Yes, sir. You're suspended from duty pending investigation. You'll receive full pay, but you're not to enter the palace grounds. We'll contact you when we have further questions. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Suspended. That meant they were taking him seriously. Or it meant they were preparing to bury him. He stood. What about the princess? Is anyone checking on her? Sir Edmund's expression flickered, just for a moment. Something almost human crossed his face. That's not your responsibility, with respect, sir. Someone made it my responsibility when they chose to hurt her within earshot of a guard whose job is to protect people. Sir Edmund walked to the door and opened it. You're dismissed, Mr. Foster. Daniel left the office, his mind spinning. He had expected resistance, but he hadn't expected to feel so utterly alone. As he walked through the administrative corridors toward the exit, he passed a familiar figure. She was walking with 2 ladies in waiting, her posture perfect, her face composed. But when their eyes met for just a second, Daniel saw something there. Recognition and perhaps gratitude. The princess gave the smallest nod. So slight that anyone else would have missed it. But Daniel didn't miss it. He continued walking, his heart pounding. Somehow she knew that he had spoken up. Outside the palace, the London sky was heavy with clouds. Daniel walked to the underground station, surrounded by tourists taking photos and couples holding hands. Normal people living normal lives. He pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother. 2 texts from fellow guards asking where he was. He couldn't tell them anything. For the first time in his life, Daniel Foster felt like a stranger in the world he had dedicated everything to. The uniform that had defined him was gone. The structure that had guided him was gone. All he had left was his word, and the hope that it would be enough. That night, he received an email. No name, no signature. Just a single line. Some battles are worth losing everything for.
How?
Daniel stared at the message. He didn't know who sent it, but he knew it was true. The investigation had begun, and there was no turning back. Asterisk, 2 weeks passed like years. Daniel spent his days in his apartment, waiting for a phone call that never came. His suspension felt less like a pause and more like exile. He watched the news obsessively, searching for any hint that his report had made waves inside the palace walls. Nothing. Just carefully staged photos of the royal family at official events. Everyone smiling. Everyone perfect. His mother called every other day. When are you coming back to work, Danny? He couldn't tell her the truth. Just some administrative things, ma'am. Nothing to worry about. But he was worrying. Every day that passed in silence made him wonder if his report had been filed away in a drawer somewhere. Forgotten, buried. Then on a gray Tuesday morning, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mr. Foster, this is Jennifer Walsh. I'm an independent investigator hired by the palace to look into certain allegations. I need to meet with you. Daniel's pulse quickened. When? Today. 2 o'clock. There's a cafe in Kensington. The Blue Door? Come alone. The line went dead. Daniel arrived 20 minutes early. The Blue Door was a small, quiet place tucked between a bookshop and a flower market. He ordered tea he didn't drink and sat at a corner table watching the door. At precisely 2 o'clock, a woman entered. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a gray coat and carrying a leather briefcase. She scanned the room, spotted Daniel, and walked over. Mr. Foster? Yes. She sat down without ordering anything. I'm Jennifer Walsh. I've spent the last 2 weeks interviewing palace staff, reviewing schedules, and examining your claim. Daniel's throat felt dry. And you're not the first person to report concerning behavior from the Duchess. The words hit him like a punch. What? Jennifer opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. She kept her voice low. Over the past 3 years, 7 staff members have filed informal complaints about hostile behavior. None of them went through with formal reports. Most left their positions quietly. Why didn't anyone say anything publicly? Because speaking out against a senior royal is career suicide. You know that. You're living it right now. Daniel leaned forward. But if there are multiple witnesses, multiple complaints, then it becomes harder to ignore, Jennifer finished. But not impossible. The palace is an institution built on image control. Scandal management. They're very good at making problems disappear. So what happens now? Jennifer closed the folder. That depends on you. I've been authorized to offer you something. A settlement. A generous sum of money. A glowing reference. A quiet exit. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and never speak of what you heard again. Daniel felt his stomach turn. They want to buy my silence. They want to protect the institution. What about protecting her, the princess? What about holding people accountable? Jennifer's expression softened slightly. I understand your frustration, but you need to understand the reality. If you push this, you'll be destroyed. Your military record will be questioned. Your credibility will be attacked. They'll dig up every mistake you've ever made and present you as someone with an agenda. I don't have an agenda. I just told the truth. The truth doesn't always win, Mr. Foster. Not against power like this. Daniel sat back in his chair. He thought about his father, his grandfather. 3 generations of service, all of it about to be turned into something dirty. But then he thought about that woman walking out of the drawing room, tears in her eyes, trying to hold herself together. He thought about the words, "No one will miss you." He looked at Jennifer. What if I refuse the settlement? Then the investigation continues. But I'll be honest with you, the likelihood of formal disciplinary action against the Duchess is almost 0. At best, there might be a private conversation. A slap on the wrist behind closed doors. And you'll still lose everything. So I lose either way. Yes, but one way, you lose with money in your pocket. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Outside the window, people walked past. Normal lives? Normal problems? He could take the money. Disappear. Start over somewhere else. Pretend none of this happened, or he could stand by his word. I'm not taking the settlement, he said quietly. Jennifer sighed. You're making a mistake, maybe, but it's my mistake to make. She stood up, gathering her briefcase. For what it's worth, I believe you. I've seen the pattern. I know what's happening. But believing you and being able to do something about it are 2 very different things. Then what do I do? Jennifer paused at the edge of the table. You survive, and you remember that sometimes just speaking up is enough. Even if no one listens, even if nothing changes, you did the right thing. That has to be enough. She walked out of the cafe, leaving Daniel alone with his cold tea. That night, he received another anonymous email. Don't give up. You're not alone. Daniel stared at the screen. Someone was watching. Someone cared. He didn't know who, but it gave him the strength to face another day. 3 months had passed since that afternoon in the corridor. 3 months since Daniel's life had been turned upside down. The investigation had quietly concluded with exactly what Jennifer Walsh had predicted: no formal action. Private conversation had taken place, apparently. Words had been exchanged behind closed doors. Nothing changed publicly. Daniel had been offered a transfer to a different royal residence, far from London, far from the center of attention. A polite exile dressed up as a promotion. He declined. Instead, he resigned. The Foster family legacy of royal service ended with him. His mother cried when he told her. Your father would be so disappointed. But Daniel wasn't sure about that anymore. His father had taught him to protect people, and that's exactly what he had tried to do. He found work with a private security firm. The pay was better. The hours were more reasonable, but something felt hollow. He had spent 8 years believing he was part of something important, something bigger than himself. Now he felt like just another person trying to get by. One evening in late autumn, Daniel was walking through Hyde Park when his phone rang. Another unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello? Mr. Foster, my name is Olivia Chen. I'm a journalist with The Guardian. I'd like to speak with you about your time in the Royal Guard. Daniel's heart sank. I'm not interested in talking to the press, I understand. But I think you should hear what I have to say. I've been investigating workplace culture within the palace for 6 months. I have multiple sources describing a pattern of bullying and hostile behavior. Your name came up. How? I protect my sources. But I know what you did. I know you reported what you witnessed, and I know you paid the price for it. Daniel stopped walking. What do you want from me? I want to tell the truth, but I need someone willing to go on record. Someone credible. Someone brave enough to stand behind their story. The palace will destroy me. They've already destroyed your career. What else can they take? Daniel thought about that. His job was gone. His future in royal service was gone. But his integrity remained. His truth remained. I talk to you. Will it change anything? I don't know, Olivia admitted. But silence definitely won't change anything. At least this way. People will know. Other staff members who are being mistreated will know they're not alone. That matters. Daniel walked to a bench and sat down. The park was quiet, except for the sound of distant traffic and rustling leaves. What do you need from me? Your story? On record. And if you're willing, your name. Anonymous sources are helpful, but a named source is powerful. Give me a few days to think about it, of course. But Mr. Foster, don't wait too long. Others are counting on people like you to speak up. The call ended. Daniel sat there as the sun set over London. He thought about the woman in the corridor, the tears she had tried to hide, the words that had cut her down. He thought about the other staff members, who had filed complaints and then disappeared quietly. 7 people. 7 stories buried. He thought about the young guards just starting their service. What kind of institution were they walking into? His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Saw you called earlier? Everything okay? Love you, Danny? He typed back, Everything's fine, Mom. Love you too. Then he opened his email and typed a message to Olivia Chen. I'll do it. I'll go on record. When do you want to meet? He hit send before he could change his mind. The article was published 3 weeks later. The headline read, Former Royal Guard speaks out about toxic culture within palace walls. Daniel's name was there, his photo, his words. Everything he had witnessed laid out for the world to see. The response was immediate and divided. Some people called him a hero. Others called him a traitor. The palace released a statement saying they took all allegations seriously and had thoroughly investigated the matter. Daniel's phone exploded with messages. Reporters, old friends, fellow guards expressing support or anger. But one message stood out, an email from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line was simply, Thank you, Mr. Foster. I cannot express publicly what your courage has meant. Please know that speaking up matters more than you realize. Some of us see what happens behind these walls. Some of us carry the weight of silence. You chose differently. You chose truth. That is the mark of real honor. With deep gratitude, K. Daniel read the message 3 times. K. Could it be her? The princess? He would never know for certain. But it didn't matter, because for the first time in months, Daniel Foster felt like himself again. Not a guard, not a whistleblower, not a scandal. Just a man who had done what he believed was right. And that was something no one could take away. 6 months after the article was published, Daniel was living a different life. He had moved to a small town outside London, away from the noise and scrutiny. He worked as a security consultant for businesses, training their teams, advising on protocols. It was honest work, quiet work, but the story hadn't gone away. The article had sparked something. Other palace staff members began coming forward, emboldened by Daniel's willingness to speak publicly. Slowly, carefully, more voices joined the conversation. Not just about one incident, but about a culture, a pattern, a system that had allowed certain people to behave without consequences for far too long. The palace was forced to launch an independent review of workplace practices. Changes were announced. New reporting procedures, confidential hotlines, mandatory respect training for all staff and family members. Were they real changes or just public relations? Daniel didn't know. But at least the conversation was happening. At least the silence had been broken. One spring morning, Daniel received a letter. Not an email, an actual letter, delivered by courier. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive. No return address. Inside was a single page, handwritten in elegant script. Dear Mr. Foster, there are moments in life when a single act of courage changes everything, not because it brings immediate justice or perfect resolution, but because it proves that someone cared enough to speak when silence would have been easier. You did not know me well. We existed in different worlds within the same walls, but you heard my pain that day, and you chose to bear witness to it. You chose to risk everything to say that what happened was wrong. I will carry that gift with me forever. The world may never fully understand what it costs to live under constant scrutiny while being told you don't measure up, to smile for cameras while carrying the weight of cruelty spoken in private rooms, but you understood. And more than that, you acted. Changes are happening now. Slowly, imperfectly, but they are happening because you refuse to look away. I wanted you to know that your sacrifice was not in vain, that the career you gave up, the reputation you risked, the peace you surrendered, all of it mattered. Some heroes wear uniforms. Others wear their conscience. Thank you for being the latter. With deepest respect and gratitude. K. Daniel read the letter 3 times, his vision blurring. He carefully folded it and placed it in his desk drawer next to the photo of his Royal Guard graduation. His father was in that photo, standing beside him, pride shining in his eyes. Daniel had worried for so long that he had failed that legacy. That ending the Foster tradition of service meant he had betrayed everything his family stood for, but now he understood something deeper. His father hadn't taught him to serve uniforms or institutions or powerful people. He had taught him to serve what was right, to protect those who needed protecting, to speak truth even when it cost everything. That legacy hadn't ended. It had simply evolved. Daniel's phone rang. It was his mother. Hi, Mom. Danny, I just wanted to call and tell you something. Her voice was thick with emotion. I spoke with your Aunt Margaret yesterday. She told me what really happened. Why you left the Guard. I didn't understand before, but now I do. Daniel's throat tightened. Ma'am, let me finish. Your father always said that real courage isn't about standing at attention or following orders. It's about knowing when to break rank for something bigger. I think he would be so very proud of you. Tears slipped down Daniel's cheeks. Thanks, Mom. I'm proud of you too. Come visit soon, okay? I will. I love you. Love you too, sweetheart. After the call ended, Daniel walked outside. The town was peaceful. A few shops, a pub. People who didn't recognize his face or care about royal scandals. Just normal people living normal lives. He had lost so much. His career, his identity, the structure that had defined him, but he had gained something more valuable. His integrity, his peace. The knowledge that when the moment came, when the choice presented itself between comfort and courage, he had chosen courage. The world kept turning. The royal family continued their duties. The palace remained standing. But somewhere in those ancient halls, perhaps someone was being treated with more kindness now. Perhaps someone was speaking up instead of suffering in silence. Perhaps a guard was standing outside a door, hearing something wrong, and remembering that they didn't have to be complicit. Daniel didn't need to know for certain. He had done his part. As he walked back to his small house, the sun breaking through clouds, Daniel Foster felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom, not from duty or responsibility, but freedom from the weight of silence. From the burden of witnessing cruelty and doing nothing. He had been a royal guard. He had stood at attention in the most famous palace in the world. He had protected history and tradition and ceremony. But in the end, the most important thing he protected was something simpler. A person who needed someone to care, and that was worth everything he had lost. Sometimes loyalty isn't about standing beside the powerful. Sometimes it's about standing up to them. Daniel had learned that lesson the hard way. But he would never regret it, because some battles are worth losing everything for, and some voices are worth risking everything to amplify. His had been one of them, and somewhere in London, in the heart of the palace, someone was walking a little taller, because a guard had chosen to see her pain. That was legacy enough.